Hello and welcome to Pause for Payments. I'm Kristy Duncan. I am truly delighted to be here today with Sarah Billings, who is SVP and Head of Payment Operations and Strategy at PNC Bank in the US. I've been looking forward to today's discussion as Sarah is a true expert, leader, and innovator in the field of payments, having worked at a couple of large US banks. And Sarah, I am certain, has forgotten far more about payments than I ever knew. Welcome, Sarah.
Thanks, Kristy. Glad to be here.
So let's get started. Innovation can mean many things to many people. And fintechs might want us to believe that they are the only ones who can innovate these days. Others might say they're innovating when they're just adding new functionality in their solutions and products. But Sarah, can you tell us, how do you define innovation? And can you give us some examples?
I'd love to, Kristy. So I think all of the examples you gave are true and they fall within the big realm of innovation, but I like to categorize for ease of this discussion. You know, there's the big I of innovation, something that is truly groundbreaking, like the move from brick and mortar shopping to online shopping or the smartphone. And then there's little I innovation, which is really solving all types of spoken or unspoken needs. And I think these days, innovation is not just something fun that you do or something to be aspired to, but it has become an absolute imperative. And it takes the form of both the big I and the little I. I think the reason that we're talking about innovation in the time of coronavirus is because something like a crisis really does bring out the big I and the little I in innovation. And I mean, if I can just give a few examples as you asked, for the big I, we in banking and payments have really been in the forefront of innovation for decades. Everything that used to be done via paper can now be done electronically, and that's not a new phenomenon. Everything from payables to receivables, billing, liquidity, cash position forecasting. You know, we can use predictive analytics to make all of our processes better. And these are not new products, services, capabilities. And many of our corporate clients have adopted these capabilities. Many consumers have adopted it on the retail side. And they've all used it to create efficiencies in the organizations. And now we are really seeing the sea change due to the crises we are facing in our world. And the impetus to adopt these innovations has really been the thing that I'm sure we're all noticing is changing. So, and this is both on the consumer and the corporate side. So solutions like remote deposit or outsourcing your check printing, these are, I won't call them absolutely traditional, but they've been around for a while, tried and true, but now they're getting new life because they're not just something that, well, it would improve our process and we'll get around to it. It's become an imperative. I mean, our world has completely changed. So it's been very exciting to watch. Same thing with a lot of electronic invoicing capabilities, whether the traditional electronic invoicing like e-bill payment or something like a real-time payment request for a payment within the immediate payment space that we have now. These are really the new normal that I believe we're going to see in our payments world. I think we see also a lot of innovation under the little I moniker. And I think this is where our current crazy, unprecedented environment has really allowed us to harness human creativity. And I think of it as whether it's cocktails to go at your neighborhood restaurant that can't open for their normal dinner service, transitioning all of our teams to virtual work almost overnight, thinking about new ways of managing people in times of enormous change and challenges. I'll speak about innovation in managing people just for a little bit, because I'm sure it will resonate with a lot of our audience. You know, how do you manage people when you've transitioned to virtual work? You can't coach. How do you coach? How do you control the quality when you can't look over someone's shoulder? And I think that it's important to understand I'm coming from the perspective of having a very broad team. So I have everything from hourly workers in operations to professional level product managers or people on the strategy and transformation side who are running massive projects, technological projects. So we've had to find ways to manage people across all ends of the spectrum and do it very effectively. And I'm sure our audience is in the same boat. So I think what we've done is really tried to see the human side of things. And not only has that been, I think, the right thing to do, but I think it boosts our business in a time like this. So, you know, you have to think about every employee and how has their family experienced this pandemic? How has their state or the city that they're in been affected by various phases of quarantine? How has their family's health been affected? Do they have a spouse or a family member that's been out of work? So we really have had to get into a whole new realm of management that, of course, I think we did in spotty places where needed, but it's been a huge focus for us. I think that's where we've shown actually a lot of thinking on our feet and creativity of how to reach people and how to solve problems. And so that's been really exciting and challenging to me as a manager. I also think last example of little I guess, is in the sales realm, right? So your sales force is not going out on calls. They're not flying around the country. Most organizations have very restrictive policies. And even if our organization let our salespeople out, what client would let us in the door right now? Yeah. And so it's completely changed the game. We're very, very virtual. And then there's the optics of the whole thing. This is like not a time for product push, right? If there ever was a time for solution selling, consultative relationship approach, it is now, because you know, people are struggling. Some companies are struggling either in ways where the economic situation hasn't favored them, or other companies are struggling in a way that they're trying to produce faster than they ever have before, but everyone's dealing with the realities of the pandemic and a virtual workforce, so it makes everything harder. So, you know, I think the opportunity for organizations to focus on this new normal and rethinking our clients' needs through the lens of what this pandemic has done. Very different by industry, by size, by geography.
That's so interesting, Sarah. We've often heard that necessity is the mother of invention, and clearly this situation has given us a necessity to really invent and innovate in a whole bunch of different ways. And I love your big I versus little I innovation approach. That's really great. Let's talk a little bit more about this coronavirus itself. And I know you've done a lot of pivots and a lot of things kind of on the fly just to address, you know, the new situation that has presented itself. Can you tell us, are there in particular ways that the virus has inspired you and PNC to innovate? And might these innovations actually live beyond the lifespan of the virus itself?
Yeah, absolutely, Kristy, they will. And first of all, I think you hit it right on the head that necessity is the mother of invention. So when you find yourself in this completely unpredictable situation, a situation that I think we can all say none of us have ever lived through before, then you look to your tools. What tools can I put together in innovative ways to get through the situation for myself, my team, and our organizations? And I think that all in all, we were pretty lucky to have good tools at our disposal. Obviously, a lot of the innovation that we have done over time, we did with absolutely no prior knowledge of the ways in which we'd be using it today. We personally, I found myself just enough ahead of the curve with some of these tools that we were able to very quickly pivot to utilizing them. And what I mean is things like real-time payments, things like APIs, and we were able to use some of these tools not only for our clients as expected, but internally within the bank's own systems as we were readying ourselves to participate in the CARES Act in the US and make loans under the PPP. So we had these capabilities at the ready and were able to very quickly accelerate the usage of them.
So yeah, you're well prepared in that sense to have great tools at your disposal and could kind of mix and match them as required in this new, totally unprecedented situation.
Yeah,
Sarah.
oh, sorry, Kristy, just to add, I think that any bank or business that didn't have these tools on the shelf, I think the business case for investing in them has just gotten a lot easier. So I think that we will see this space burgeon. And it's not only the high tech, the API, the new payment rails, those are wonderful, but it's also innovating with our processes on the fly. So as we see more demand for our clients wanting to adopt something like check printing, outsourcing for obvious reasons, or invoice automation for obvious reasons as they're outside of their offices, we were able to take what could sometimes be a lengthy and deliberative implementation process and accelerate it, again, just simply out of necessity. No longer are there committees like deciding where the logo should go on the check and how big should it be. It's about, getting the payments out. So I do think it's enabled us to think more openly about that process of adopting the new processes and implementing them very quickly.
Yeah, that's great, Sarah. It's interesting looking at the market, and I've seen in many instances around the world, people have commented that their innovation curves have become very compressed. So they were anticipating, 6 months ago that this new product or service or innovation would get out to market to reach whatever X% of penetration within 5 years, and they're seeing that has been cut in half or a quarter. It's just really fascinating to see that.
Right. Absolutely. I think there is a silver lining to every cloud, and we wouldn't wish for this pandemic. We did not ask for it, but there will be some good things that come out of it. And I think the adoption of newer, modern, technologically as well as modern from a business process standpoint, will definitely make our industry and all the clients that we serve better in the end. I think you asked as part of your question, do I think that these innovations will go away after it? I do not think so. I mean, do you really think after you start, selling someone money on your mobile phone that you're ever going to stop and write a check and put it in the mail again? Maybe a few people, but I don't think most would. So it's really served as the impetus to try new things. And typically, if those things work pretty well, then they're going to stick.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. It's really interesting, even on the consumer payment side, where we see a lot of the credit and debit cards have raised their contactless card not present or not their contactless limits, and it's
Mm-hmm.
really pushed the use of those
Yeah.
tremendously.
Yeah.
So yeah, another innovation that's happening to really push us into new ways and things using our payments methods. So
Mm-hmm.
innovation's often seen as a technical or an operational issue, and I know you talked earlier about the people component of
Mm-hmm.
innovation. Can you tell us about how you see the people fitting into innovation from a PNC perspective?
Yes. Um, Innovating to manage the human side of the effects of coronavirus, and let's not also forget the worldwide push for social justice that has been spurred on by recent and ongoing events, unfortunately. We have really taken the stance of focusing on our people. And it's, again, as I mentioned, it's not just because it's the right moral thing to do, it's because you can't expect folks to go through this time of enormous change. You can't ask them to continue to work every day to keep the financial system open and flowing if you're not going to care about them and their day-to-day needs and their bigger concerns. So I think this was a great opportunity to really practice what we preach and put it into very tactical forms. So if you have lower wage workers or hourly workers and their state is beginning to quarantine, so think back to the early days in March, you need to make sure your people are food secure. You need to make sure that they have a reliable way to get to work if they still do need to come into the office. And you need to maybe go that extra mile to get technical equipment to people who have transitioned on a dime to working from home. So and I'm sure the entire audience has a slew of examples of where we really had to step up and make these things happen. And what we also did after we solved the immediate needs is we really increased what I call the check-ins with the teams at all levels. And we focus this not on the work, we focus it on health and mental wellness. And this is something that we normally do, and we're always there, and we have wonderful programs within organizations to help with these things. And we do, I, for instance, do quarterly roadshows, if you will, with my teams for town halls, but this was different. We really focused just on them. And interestingly enough, we're here on video conference. And a lot of my colleagues spend their whole day on video conference. All their meetings have shifted to a video form. We have not, for the majority of our meetings, we are not doing them on video. We're still using, Skype and the tools that we've historically used, and that works really, really well. I'll tell you where we've started using video. It's more for the personal and the human contact, because then you can see the body language, you can see if someone's checked out, where you might need to give a helping hand. And so we've really used the video conferencing to emphasize the personal interaction there.
Yeah, I like that a lot, Sarah. We were in the same boat just for the women in payments team, where
Mm-hmm.
we always used to do our team calls just with audio, but then I said, you know what, with this virus, and who knows when I'll see you again, let's do
Yeah,
video. We have,
yeah.
and it's actually improved the team meetings, I think, tremendously.
I agree. I agree.
So I want to turn to the whole dollars thing. Always the elephant in the room. People holding the purse strings might ask, why do we need to innovate? After all, many of us have been doing the same things day in, day out for a long time. It's often a case of it's not broken. Why are we fixing it? Can you tell us, why do you see the importance, like what is the importance of innovation?
Well, I think that this pandemic has been the clarion call to innovate. So, as I said earlier, if I hadn't had some of these tools on the shelf at my disposal that we created for a different purpose, to serve our clients' needs, I could not myself have used them in a pinch to deliver on some capabilities that the bank never foresaw even having to ramp up, let alone in the time frames that we were forced to implement them. So, you know, as a payments professional and as a product and strategy person at heart, you've dreamed about these capabilities for years, right? You have it all perfect in your mind how people will use it, and then it is pretty cool when you get to use it yourself, and like in 10 days time you create an entirely new process of these components, and then like I can't wait until we can get into a more normal sales environment, because I would just love to say, you know, I'm not just telling you to do this and all the regular buzzwords of efficiency and productivity, da, 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 da. I'm telling you, I did it and it worked. And, you know, it's very exciting to be able to do that. So the next things that come across our desks, or their next ideas that we dream up, I think we're all going to think about them through this lens.
Yeah, that's a great perspective, Sarah. It's always good to be at the leading edge, because you never know when all these tools and things will come in handy. This is, you know, certainly one of the most unprecedented and unforeseen circumstances that any of us has ever seen in our careers and our lives. So to close off today's discussion, I'm wondering if you can tell the audience what innovations in the B2B payment space that you anticipate in the next 3 to 5 years. And I know that's the ultimate impossible question, but given you know, what we've seen just in the last 6 months, are you able to make some projections, some wild thoughts?
Wow, wild. Well, I really do think that this is one of those silver linings, like you said it. B2B has been the hardest nut to crack in automating, electronifying, modernizing the payment space. But did we really have a choice these days? So I believe that we are in this industry seeing a pivot point for these B2B payments. And we already know that the adoption of new technology has been accelerating, but still a lot of traditional B2B practices exist. This global pandemic, it just has a way of forcing change, accelerating it in a way that we've seen only maybe when a new regulation is passed, right? That's the only thing I can really equate it to. It's almost like that overnight, that light bulb goes off, the button clicks, and you go there. And what's really exciting, if you can think of anything as exciting, because our lives, I think, have become a little bit too boring, but you know, we really have invested, and some of us who've been in payments for a long time, we can even remember the days when EDI was, you know, big innovation talk. And, you know, there's ACH decades ago. You know, I think a lot of us hoped that there would be more adoption by now. And now, of course, we have the whole immediate payments realm, which I must say, we see that pace of adoption has accelerated and taken off in a much different way than we saw 20 or more years ago with the other options. But I think we now have the technology. Like I said, we were just enough as an industry ahead of the curve with immediate payments, with API investments that are ready-made for this remote, real-time world that we find ourselves in. And I also think that this will expand as we see our industry globally adopting more of the ISO standards. So that's probably the next frontier. And I think that the experiences we all face in this pandemic will allow us to see that type of investment probably in a new light. That's my guess.
Those are all great observations, Sarah. I love them. I would totally agree that this digital innovation is really pushing not only the banks but the customers as well to be more resilient in their operations, in the way that they can service their clients, but also just on the day-to-day business perspective. So that resilience, I think, is really important, and the coronavirus has highlighted that in many, many ways.
I love that. You're so right. It's made us all resilient, business-wise and otherwise.
Indeed, indeed. So I love the big I, little I innovation imperative that you talk about. I love the people aspect, because we can't forget that, it's humans are why we're doing this. That's why we're in business, is to serve other people. And the servant leader model, I think, is really apt in this situation. Sarah, thank you for chatting with me today about innovation as inspired by the coronavirus, and why it's important to advance innovation and to always be pushing that envelope forward. Your insights are informative. It's been a privilege to hear about your work. I've enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for joining me here today.
Thank you, Kristy. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. I'm going to encourage all of our audience to join us online for this and the other Pause for Payments webinars we're hosting with inspirational women leaders from around the global payments ecosystem. And thank you for listening today.